She would not be my first choice, that I can tell you.
You take a look at her words. You tell me what you think. I don't think so.
The reasons that Diddy was able to hide in plain sight for so long is because so many of his victims were male.
Take responsibility for what you want to know. Don't say what other people. This is a conversation that I'm having with you right now.
You're right.
Okay, so I'm just telling you right now, okay? Just put your manners back in.
Look at a game of chess. The king moves one square at a time. What does the queen do? Zips here, zips there. Easy for a chick, right?
There's a lot of men that feel by their very existence that they're bad.
Yeah. Well, it's a big cultural
fed this
problem.
thought of toxic masculinity, and the things that they're attracted to, they think they've been told are stupid, or that they're evil, or there's a thing about being a man in this world today that I think we have to look at all human beings as just human beings.
Yeah. Life for a man is harder than life for a woman. We need to have a lot of shit to be an important man. To be a woman, you need makeup. If you're truly beautiful, you don't need anything else. I've been on boats in Dubai with 19-year-old Moldovan girls. The guy who got that boat needed $100 million. That bitch, makeup.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Who's number one with Hispanics? Trump.
The concept of toxic masculinity refers to cultural norms around masculinity that can be harmful, both to individuals and society. It often involves traits like emotional suppression, aggression, dominance, and a rejection of anything perceived as weak or feminine. Positive masculinity, on the other hand, emphasizes traits like emotional intelligence, vulnerability, respect for others, and healthy expressions of strength. Here are some examples of people who have been criticized for displaying toxic masculinity, as well as some who are often celebrated for exhibiting positive masculinity. So let's take a look at some toxic masculinity examples that I have compiled from your consensus over on the internet. As netizens, there are a lot of names that come up repeatedly that are associated with toxic masculinity, like Andrew Tate, Joe Rogan, Donald Trump, Chris Brown, Elon Musk even. But why? Andrew Tate, a former kickboxer and social media personality, is often criticized for promoting harmful views on gender roles, women, and masculinity. He has been accused of glorifying violence, misogyny, and an aggressive, domineering approach to life and relationships. But what about Joe Rogan? A popular podcaster and UFC commentator, Rogan has been associated with toxic masculinity in some circles for promoting hyper-masculine ideals, making dismissive comments about mental health, and encouraging a quote-unquote alpha male mentality. Critics point out that his rhetoric can perpetuate toxic attitudes about gender roles and aggression. Now, Donald Trump, I don't know if this one even needs to be spoken on. I think we have all seen examples of Donald Trump being incredibly toxic, whether you are pro-Trump or anti-Trump. We've both seen it. It's kind of right out there in the open. But the former and now to be current president, Donald Trump, has often been criticized for promoting aggressive and hyper-masculine behaviors such as refusal to show vulnerability, a tendency to belittle others, and his attitudes towards women. He has been known for displaying confidence, dominance, and competitive aggression, which are often associated with toxic masculinity. Now, Chris Brown, again, if you don't know why he's toxic, I don't know what to tell you, but the singer has faced accusations of toxic masculinity due to his history of violent behavior and public abuse towards women, most notably in 2009, the assault of Rihanna. This incident, along with his subsequent behavior, has contributed to his reputation for perpetuating toxic masculine norms. And then there's Elon Musk. Though often admired for his innovative work, Musk has faced criticism for sometimes perpetuating the genius and loner stereotype that feeds into toxic masculinity, often seeming to disregard emotional intelligence and focusing on competitiveness and a cold, hyper-rational approach to leadership. But with all of these toxic masculinity examples, aren't there any leaders in this world? And sure there are. There's actually a great number of people that are associated with positive masculinity, such as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Dwayne Johnson is frequently praised for his positive masculinity, and we all know The Rock. He emphasizes hard work, perseverance, and humility, but also frequently displays vulnerability, kindness, and emotional openness. His messages often promote self-care, mental health, and the importance of supporting others, breaking away from the quote-unquote tough guy stereotype. And honestly, I think that Dwayne The Rock Johnson is a perfect example of showing the pipeline that somebody can go from toxic masculinity to more positive, or that we can at least make improvements and be conscious of our behaviors, because I don't think that The Rock was always known for being somebody that is a ideal of positive masculinity. Coming from the background of the WWF and WWE, he's definitely somebody that used to exhibit a ton of toxic masculine character traits and has now really worked on himself and created a different way at how he approaches society. But there's some other positive examples like Keanu Reeves, Prince Harry, even people have said, Fred Rogers or Ryan Reynolds. But why Keanu Reeves? Keanu Reeves, who I think has probably one of the most positive reputations in Hollywood in general, is often celebrated for his humility, kindness, and genuine respect for others. His quiet, unassuming nature, coupled with his advocacy for mental health and his generosity, both in charitable donations and toward colleagues, have made him an example of positive masculinity in the public eye. But what about Prince Harry? Because I know that there are definitely some conflicting opinions on him. Well, according to netizens, Prince Harry has actively spoken out about his struggles with mental health, his experiences with therapy, and the pressures of masculinity. His openness about vulnerability, compassion, and the desire to promote mental health awareness challenges traditional notions of masculinity that prioritize stoicism and emotional suppressions. But what about Fred Rogers? You know who Fred Rogers is, right? Mr. Rogers? Well, Fred Rogers, the beloved host of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, exemplified positive masculinity in his commitment to empathy, kindness, and emotional expression, and a refusal to conform to traditional harmful ideas of what it means to be a man. His gentle approach to masculinity made him a groundbreaking figure for emotional intelligence and tenderness. And let's not forget about Mr. Dressup, because I feel like he belongs in that same category. But let's talk about our hero, Ryan Reynolds. If you don't like Ryan Reynolds, you're not human. But Ryan Reynolds is another example of someone who has publicly embraced a more positive version of masculinity. He is open about his mental health struggles and uses humor to address vulnerabilities, blending traditional notions of masculinity with self-awareness and emotional honesty. So in summary, toxic masculinity often involves rigid, harmful expressions of strength, aggression, and emotional suppression, while positive masculinity promotes vulnerability, emotional intelligence, empathy, and compassion. The examples above help highlight the range of behaviors associated with each type of masculinity, showing how public figures can influence societal perceptions of what it means to be a man. But what do you think?
Yes, you told us
Trump.
that earlier.
I love the Mexican people and their spirit, but the country of Mexico is killing us.
What if everything you knew or thought you knew about masculinity was wrong? In a world where we are constantly bombarded with ideas of what it means to be a man, it's easy to fall into the trap of outdated, harmful stereotypes. But what if there's a better, healthier way to define masculinity? A way that doesn't involve suppressing emotions, dominating others, or living up to unrealistic expectations. Today, we're diving into the truth about toxic masculinity versus positive masculinity. We'll explore how certain public figures embody these different sides, and how you can start embracing a more balanced, authentic version of yourself. So, whether you've found the pressure to tough it out, or you're just curious about the shift in how we view manhood, stick around, because this video is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about what it really means to be a man. Let's get into it. There is a lot of discourse lately around toxic masculinity and the loss of masculinity in Western society specifically. With all of the conversation surrounding it, one might wonder what masculinity truly means in today's world. The term toxic masculinity often dominates discussions, painting a picture of a narrow, harmful view of manhood, characterized by aggression, emotional repression, and dominance. But what if we shifted the focus? What if we explored a different narrative, one that celebrates positive masculinity? In this documentary, we aim to unpack the complexities of masculinity, diving into what it means to be a man in the 21st century. Positive masculinity is not about rejecting masculinity altogether. Rather, it's about embracing a version that is nurturing, empathetic, and respectful. It encourages men to express their emotions, build meaningful relationships, and contribute positively to their communities. Throughout this exploration, we'll hear from experts, activists, and everyday individuals who challenge the stereotypes surrounding manhood. We'll delve into how societal norms have shaped our understanding of masculinity, often leading to harmful behaviors and expectations. But more importantly, we'll highlight the stories of men who embody positive masculinity, showcasing how vulnerability, compassion, and respect can coexist with strength. We'll also investigate how media representations influence our perceptions of what it means to be a man. Are the narratives we consume helping or hindering our understanding of masculinity? Are they promoting a toxic ideal, or can they pave the way for a more nuanced, healthy perspective? As we journey through various perspectives and experiences, we invite you to consider what masculinity means to you. Join us as we explore the transformative power of positive masculinity and its potential to not only reshape individual lives, but also to impact our society as a whole. In a world that often seems divided, let's find common ground and redefine what it means to be a man, one rooted in kindness, understanding, and authenticity. Understanding toxic masculinity. In order for us to understand the power of positive masculinity, let us first explore what toxic masculinity really means. The term has become a focal point in discussions about gender dynamics, often eliciting strong reactions, both in support and in opposition. But what exactly constitutes toxic masculinity, and why is it such a pervasive issue in our society? At its core, toxic masculinity refers to cultural norms and expectations surrounding traditional male behavior that can be harmful not only to individuals but to society at large. The concept encompasses a range of attitudes and practices that encourage men to conform to a narrow, rigid definition of what it means to be, quote-unquote, masculine.
The first big money I ever made in my life, I first became a multimillionaire by running a webcam studio. So I had beautiful women sitting on computers talking to guys on webcams from all around the world. That's how I first made my money. And at one point, I had 75 women in 4 locations working for me, which was stressful and the wrong way to do it. I ended up removing my army and going to special forces of around 15 people, 15 girls. And me and my brother made a lot of money doing that. But the PhD course, the Pimping Host degree, was teaching people how I managed females in those scenarios, how I controlled their emotions, how I convinced them to work and give me most of their money, how I convinced them to share me with other women, why they obeyed me. So it was never so much about out there picking up girls. It was actually something else. It was more about the psychology of things. And I'm saying, look, I'm a theorist, here's the theory. Yeah. That's fine. And he's managed to be quite successful just doing that. If he were to start lying and saying, I'm fucking all these 16-year-old women or 18-year-old women, whatever the law is in America. 18?
It's 18 usually. You get married at 16. I think.
All right, in Romania it's 16, sorry. Yeah. So if I'm fucking all these 18-year-old women, blah, 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 well then he's added a bunch of lies on top of the character. I don't understand why. Yeah. I think if you truly have something to say and you truly understand the game, you don't need to tell a bunch of lies. Once you start saying you're a playboy and you're slaying pussy, well now you have a huge issue, and the issue is, where's your proof?
Receipts.
I'm the only guy on Twitter who's putting up pictures of him with hot girls. Yeah. But if you're not gonna kick her out for certain things, then she's gonna continue to do certain things. I get these messages all the time from guys. Hey, I have this girlfriend, I really like her, but she has these male friends. Make her choose. You are the friends. She's gonna fuck one of them eventually. Otherwise, like, what are you delaying this for? If you are arguing about male friends and she continues to want these male friends, she obviously is gonna get drunk one night and suck some dick. We know that. You know that. Everyone knows that. So tell her, choose me or the male friends. If she chooses the male friends and walks out on you, you've saved yourself a whole ton of time. Yep. What am I talking about? I don't want to come across as a sexist. I'm a realist, and reality is sexist.
There's no sexist pigs here.
Not at all. I'm a realist, and reality is sexist, right? So sometimes if I'm with a chick or whatever, and we're in a situation, she gives me her opinion, and I'm like, look, without disrespect, you're a 19-year-old female. What do you know about the world? You don't know anything about anything. Just leave it to me. You don't know anything. I don't expect you to know anything. So I don't know why you're trying to give me your opinion, because I don't put any responsibility on you to perform in basically any way outside of the bedroom. So just shush. Don't worry about it. Leave it to me, right? So, yeah, the reality is sexist. I guess I'm a little bit of a sexist, but that's how it goes. The view is completely skewed, and it's skewed because women have become more masculine in the fact that they believe that them sleeping around or sleeping with a bunch of people is no different than a man doing it, which is obviously completely wrong. Everyone with a brain knows that. And it's just a messed up culture. It's just
women in the world, the most beautiful, the most feminine, where are they?
That's a good question. And women are women everywhere, right? So women are a pain in the ass everywhere. This idea that you're going to go to some town somewhere and it's going to be the haven of beautiful girls who know their place, I don't believe that's real. All beautiful girls know they're beautiful girls. So to a degree, they're always going to be hard to get, et cetera, et cetera. But I do believe that if you get an Eastern European woman, the idea of her looking after you in terms of cleaning the house and cooking for you is 0% offensive. Her mother did it for her father. Her sister does it for her man. It's just very normal to them.
It's like common sense.
It's common sense, right? So they have a better understanding of gender roles as a whole. So I'd say that.
And strong and rich with a nice car and a nice apartment. Whereas to be a high-value female, you need to be hot. If you're nice, it's a bonus, but it's not even that necessary.
That's it.
If you're a pretty female, even if you're a piece of shit person, you're going to get messages on Instagram.
Some key traits associated with toxic masculinity include emotional repression, the glorification of violence, and the belief that men must dominate in relationships and social hierarchies. So let's talk about emotional repression. One of the most insidious aspects of toxic masculinity is the expectation that men should suppress their emotions. From a young age, boys are often told to man up or not cry, creating a stigma around vulnerability. This emotional repression can lead to serious consequences, including mental health issues such as depression and anxiety. For instance, studies show that men are less likely to seek help for mental health concerns, often due to the fear of being perceived as weak. The tragic irony is that this reluctance can lead to a cycle of emotional turmoil that manifests in unhealthy behaviors such as substance abuse or aggression.
I want to talk today about supposed toxic masculinity. And I think this is going to be a good discussion not only about masculinity itself, but also about whether it's broken and the effect that MAGA Trumpism has had, as well as Trump himself and the Manosphere influencers, Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, the effect that they've all had on this issue. And it'll also let us talk a little more broadly about the cultural questions around masculinity, whether there is a crisis of masculinity, whether it has anything to do with trans people or the LGBT community, as some on the right like to claim. And to even frame this issue, we first have to talk about what we can agree on as the facts go. Now, one fact is that Manosphere influencers like Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, Tucker Carlson, Patrick Bet-David, the Liver King, and others, you might say, well, I don't know if this one or that one is necessarily part of the Manosphere. To a degree, Trump is part of this. They've gained huge followings. And to many of their followers, to the young men that follow them, they really have become mentors, in a sense, about what it means to be masculine, what it means to be a man, alpha versus beta. And the theme here is that these manosphere influencers and figures are usually a particular type of man, but not always. So they tend to look physically strong, sometimes because of steroids, but they have a particular look. They purport to have sex appeal or implicitly present themselves as what a traditional heterosexual woman would want. They're not usually super enlightened when it comes to egalitarian views and ideas. Now, you might notice something. You might hear me saying this and you might be saying, David, have you looked at Trump? Have you looked at Jordan Peterson? They are not these muscular stereotypes of the alpha male. And you would be completely correct. One of the interesting things about Trump and Peterson and some others is they've managed to take on the persona despite not really being that. Trump is obese. He's out of shape. He's not attractive in any normal sense of the word. He doesn't exercise. He's not strong. But he's managed to build the persona. And Trump has been able to do this by playing up negative traits also associated with masculinity in some circles, like never admitting to mistakes. He doesn't read sissy books. He doesn't eat vegetables, that sort of nonsense. So the next thing to explore is why have people, especially young men, right-leaning but not always, been drawn into this? And there are some realities about what's happening along gender lines in the world that we really shouldn't ignore. It is true that in some areas, young men are falling behind young women, and the power dynamics for romantic relationships are being skewed towards women to a degree. Now, it's critical for me to mention here, CEOs, presidents, at the top positions of power are still very skewed towards men. But in sort of a general level, women are doing better in school. Girls are doing better in school. Women are more likely to go to college. Women are more likely, and they're actually starting to surpass men in terms of entering into what we call elite knowledge work, some of the more desirable jobs. They're doing better in test scores. And this then has the further effect of making men less appealing in the heterosexual dating pool. One big trait that predicts a man's success in long-term romantic heterosexual relationships is, does he appear to have prospects in life?
Was Nicole the love of your life?
What do you mean, Peter?
You were married for 10 years.
Listen, we raised children. I mean, how do you answer that? How do you answer that question? She's someone that I plan on getting married again.
You do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And having kids?
Absolutely.
But Nicole was a major part of your life and a love of your life at the time.
I loved Nick very much. There's no question.
Would you like Nicole to remarry?
Yes. I want Nicole to be happy. That's what I want.
And do you have a relationship where you talk, it's a parenting relationship, and talk professionally about each other's work?
Listen, here's the thing, Peter.
Yeah.
You're stepping over a line now. You're stepping over a line. You know you are.
I suppose they're questions, though, that people want to know.
Peter, you want to know. Take responsibility for what you want to know. Don't say what other people. This is a conversation that I'm having with you right now.
You're right.
Okay, so I'm just telling you right now, okay? Just put your manners back in.
Do you think I was out of line?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I apologise for that
Good.
sincerely.
Good.
Fat, ugly, sack of shit. Have you ever seen a woman try and do anything competently? Female self-defense is bullshit. I'll bust their jaw. Get in the cage, and I'll show you what toxic is. Your wife could watch.
The glorification of violence. Toxic masculinity also glorifies violence as a means of asserting power. This is evident in various aspects of our culture, from action movies that idolize the strong, silent type to video games that reward aggressive behavior. Men are often socialized to equate strength with physical dominance, reinforcing the idea that being a real man means being tough and unyielding. This mindset can lead to real-world consequences, including bullying, domestic violence, and even mass shootings, as some men feel compelled to prove their masculinity through violent means. Dominance and control. In relationships, toxic masculinity manifests in a sense of entitlement and control. Men may feel pressured to assert their authority over their partners, friends, and even family members. This belief in male dominance can create unhealthy dynamics where emotional manipulation, jealousy, and possessiveness are viewed as signs of love rather than red flags. The normalization of these behaviors contributes to a culture where respect and equality are compromised and where abusive relationships can thrive. So what's the role of the media? Media plays a significant role in perpetuating toxic masculinity, from television shows that depict men as emotionally aloof to advertisements that equate masculinity with material success. These narratives reinforce harmful stereotypes. Consider the archetype of the bad boy, for example, in popular culture, who is often romanticized despite engaging in reckless or disrespectful behavior. Such portrayals send a message that to be desirable, one must exhibit traits associated with toxic masculinity, further entrenching these behaviors in societal norms. But what are the consequences for society? The repercussions of toxic masculinity extend beyond individual men. They ripple through society, affecting everyone. Toxic behaviors foster environments where gender inequality thrives, making it difficult for women to assert their rights and pursue their ambitions. Furthermore, men who conform to these toxic ideals may find themselves isolated, trapped in a cycle of aggression and emotional disconnect. The lack of healthy emotional expression and relationship building can lead to a societal landscape fraught with misunderstanding and conflict. conflict. In this context, understanding toxic masculinity is crucial. It serves as a reminder of the damaging consequences of adhering to outdated and harmful norms. By critically examining these behaviors and their roots, we can begin to pave the way for a healthier understanding of masculinity, one that values emotional openness, mutual respect, and genuine connection. As we move forward, we'll explore the concept of positive masculinity, examining how it offers an alternative framework that not only uplifts men but also benefits society as a whole. It's time to redefine what it means to be a man, embracing a version of masculinity that is empowering, inclusive, and compassionate. In Chapter 2, we'll be defining masculinity across cultures. To understand the rich tapestry of masculinity, we must first define what it is and explore how different cultures around the world perceive and express masculine identity. While definitions may vary, masculinity generally encompasses a set of attributes, behaviors, and roles typically associated with being male. These often include traits such as strength, courage, and assertiveness, and independence. However, the way these traits are valued and expressed can differ significantly from one culture to another, influenced by historical, social, and economic concepts. So let's explore the Western perspective on masculinity. In Western cultures, particularly in the United States and parts of Europe, traditional masculinity has often been characterized by a competitive spirit and an emphasis on individual achievement. Here, the American dream encapsulates the belief that success is achieved through hard work and determination. This often relates to a masculine ideal that celebrates ambition and economic power, sometimes at the expense of emotional expression. Men are frequently socialized to be providers and protectors, roles that can lead to pressure to conform to societal expectations of strength and stoicism.
I am the most dangerous man on the planet. This is how Andrew Tate describes himself. You've probably heard of him before, or maybe he's popped up on your TikTok For You page sometime in the past month. After all, he's been in videos that have been viewed 11.4 billion times. And last month, his name was more searched than both Donald Trump and Kim Kardashian. Videos of Tate, who is a self-admitted sexist, usually contain some pretty violent misogyny, with videos circulating where he admits that women cannot and should not drive.
How are women allowed to drive?
And that they are property to be owned by men.
If a woman is going out with a man, she belongs to that man, that's his woman.
Totally normal views held by a totally normal dude who has a totally normal accent.
Haram.
The craziest thing though, he doesn't even have a TikTok account. Let me explain how this man has taken over the internet and just how dangerous he really is. Tate is a British-American kickboxer and influencer. According to Tate himself, and reported by The Mirror, he has 87 fights and just 9 losses to his name. He also owns multiple casinos in Romania where he lives, and to be fair, he does look like the exact type of guy that would own multiple casinos. Andrew Tate thinks women are barely sentient. He has said these exact words, as well as many others to this effect, in numerous podcasts over the years. He's not wrong, to be fair. I'm a woman and I'm having a really hard time answering very simple questions like, should a woman be beaten with a belt? Should women be responsible for their own rape? Should I market crypto courses to 13-year-olds online? Answers aside, extracts from these interviews have gone viral online with billions of cumulative views. Tate's own fans are behind this and have been creating fake burner TikTok accounts to spread the teachings of their misogynist messiah because he doesn't even have one. The Guardian even did an experiment where they set up a TikTok account pretending to be a teenage boy. Tate videos were presented to them on their For You page almost immediately. They watched a few and were then bombarded with more and more videos of Tate each time they opened the app. So, the loyal followers of Andrew Tate have been purposefully messing with the TikTok algorithm so that you see him, which is probably why you know about him already, even if you really didn't want to. Unfortunately, Tate has been around since before For You pages and podcasts, and he has been sexist and weird since the very beginning. He appeared on Big Brother in 2016, but was removed from the house after a video surfaced of him hitting a woman with a belt.
Did I say it? Look at the camera. This is what happens, you don't listen.
Both have since defended the video as a consensual sexual act. However, he also had police called to his home in Romania this April after the US Embassy sent a tip that a woman was being held there against her will. Police found 2 women in Tate's home, and the case was later expanded to cover rape and human trafficking allegations, but is still ongoing. Tate moved to Romania from the UK after abuse allegations here, too. In one video, where Tate explains why he moves, he alleges that it would be easier to evade rape convictions in Romania than in the UK.
This is probably 40% of the reason I moved to Romania. They go, oh, well, you're a rapist. I say, no, I'm not a fucking rapist. But I like the idea of being able to just say to do what I want. I like being free.
So, you're all caught up to speed on Andrew Tate. I bet you have whiplash and a little bit of stomachache as well. A spokesperson for TikTok told Joe, misogyny and other hateful ideologies and behaviours are not tolerated on TikTok, and we are working to review this content and take action against violations of our guidelines. We continually look to strengthen our policies and enforce strategies, including adding more safeguards to our recommendation system. TikTok also told Joe that they are actively looking into a number of videos regarding Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate did not respond to our request for comment. Hey, maybe he just didn't want to speak to a woman. Who knows?
And the better women and girls do, the more the bar is sort of raised as far as men are concerned. And we see more and more men having zero relationships with women, being unable to find women willing to date them, etc. So in a sense, we should acknowledge there is a reason that men would say, I need something. I'm looking for something to help me. And so what you end up with is this fertile ground for the rise of toxic masculinity, or if people don't like that phrase, we might call it distorted masculinity. Maybe that makes more sense. What Trump and Peterson and Liver King and this steroid sales guy on Twitter named Andy Elliott and Andrew Tate, what they tap into is they portray the strength and dominance that a lot of men think they aspire to, and they offer a narrative that if you're failing, it's because the system is woke or the system is rigged against you. And the solution, according to many of them, is even more cartoonish masculinity. And then they capitalize on your insecurities. The girls are doing better in school. They're getting into better colleges. They're not paying attention to me. They're getting better jobs right out of college. They're the ones who decide which of these 10 gentlemen suitors am I interested in dating. And what these manosphere guys offer is the promise that you can reclaim your status through dominance and aggression. The parallel to Trumpism is so clear. Trumpism sells a vision or a version of masculinity, really both, that is also rooted in these primal instincts and returning to a bygone era when America was great. And that includes male dominance, male success over female success in the workplace and education, women relegated back to working in the home and raising kids. So the debate around wokeness and toxic masculinity, that may not be the right language, but it's language that turns many people off, and we've talked about that. But what we have is this Instagramification of masculinity, symbols of strength and power, guns, muscles, aggression, sometimes steroids, sometimes supplements, sometimes eating cow heart or at least a carnivore diet. It's all intertwined with the same ideology. If you look, by the way, at true alpha behavior, even in primates, it includes compassion. It includes being a leader of your community or your immediate clan of animals, if we're talking about the animal kingdom. But the Trumpist version of alpha masculinity is rooted in aggression and in dominance, which actually fractures society and communities rather than strengthen them. And it also doesn't really do anything to help the young men who are struggling to achieve what they claim to want. You don't abandon strength and ambition. You don't say strength and ambition are bad, but you integrate them with values that are not antisocial and actually promote collective progress and respect, contribute to society, to teach, to be an activist, rather than the MAGA win at all costs with unhinged aggression. Instead of a view that here is the one model of masculinity that's approved, it's, hey, you know what? There are many models. There's LGBT, there's trans, there's all of this stuff. And being an ally of those groups doesn't make you any less of a man or any less strong. If anything, it makes you stronger because you understand your identity isn't jeopardized by supporting others. Now, before getting to some positive examples of masculinity, it's also relevant to mention that even many of their alpha male gurus don't even meet their own image of masculinity. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, Donald Trump is obese. He's out of shape. He dyes his hair. He wears a massive amount of makeup. He's not athletic. He fake tans his skin. He was scared to join the military, so he got a letter about his bone spurs. He constantly plays the victim. He says he's treated so unfairly. He lost an election because he was not respected and treated unfairly by Biden or whatever. That doesn't even fit their own model. Jordan Peterson seems extremely fragile emotionally. There's nothing wrong with crying, but regularly weeping and wailing in his interviews is very much not the picture of masculinity. He's also very far from the rugged look that the alpha MAGAs claim is best. And if you look even at someone like Andrew Tate, the stories and the narratives about the sexual conquests are so over the top and obnoxious and obvious braggadocio that they seem more of a reflection of his insecurity rather than his dominance. So now let's talk about some other models of masculinity. You respect and you support women and you cooperate when it's possible. Masculinity is not at all threatened by supporting trans people or gay people or whoever the case may be. Barack Obama is another interesting example. As a constitutional law professor and he got mustard on whatever, a hot dog. They try to play it up like Obama's kind of a sissy man. But the truth is that President Obama is very calm and totally in control of any situation in which he finds himself, values and understands collaboration, has a high EQ, doesn't shame people or make fun of them the way Trump does. He's thoughtful. He wields significant power, but not through aggression and dominance. Instead, it's by connecting with people. He sees Michelle Obama as a 50-50 equal in his marriage. He's spoken about the importance of being a dad to his daughters. He doesn't suggest that he values his children primarily for what job they get or how much money they make, the way Donald Trump has shown. So there are absolutely interesting models on the left and from the left of a less toxic masculinity. So is there a crisis of masculinity? I don't even know what that means. I think it's clear, especially if you look at the world of the MAGA manosphere type influencers. If there is a crisis, the crisis is caused by or a result of a perversion of what it means to be a man that comes from MAGA and to some degree comes from Trump.
Now, as a white man that has always grown up in Western society, you can take these next sections with a grain of salt, as I feel like I am not the spokesperson to talk about masculinity in other cultures that I've not experienced for myself. But here is a general consensus of what I found doing my research on how masculinity is expressed in other cultures around the world. So let's talk about the Asian perspective on masculinity. In many Asian cultures, masculinity is often intertwined with concepts of honor, duty, and familial responsibility. If you grew up in an Asian household, whether you are in Western Hemisphere or whether you actually grew up in Asia, I'd love for you to chime in and let me know what your perspective is as well. We're also going to be covering African, Middle Eastern, Latin American, and indigenous masculinity differences. So if you're from any culture, I would love to know what your perspective is and how you experienced the ideals of masculinity growing up, whether you're a man or a woman. So, for instance, in a traditional Chinese culture, Confucian ideals emphasize filial piety and the importance of maintaining harmony within the family. This can lead to a model of masculinity that prioritizes the collective over the individual, placing men in the role of caregivers and moral leaders. In Japan, the concept of gamen, or enduring hardship with patience and dignity, highlights a form of masculinity that values emotional restraint and social harmony. However, the pressure to fulfill these roles can also result in mental health struggles, as men may feel compelled to suppress their feelings to maintain family honor. Now let's talk about African perspectives on masculinity. Across the African continent, perceptions of masculinity can vary widely depending on cultural, ethnic, and regional contexts. In many societies, masculinity is linked to communal values and social responsibility. For example, among the Maasai people of East Africa, bravery and warrior status are celebrated, but these traits are also connected to community welfare and protection. Conversely, in some urbanized areas, Western influences may promote a more individualistic model of masculinity, leading to conflicts with traditional values. This cultural interplay can create complexities as younger generations navigate between these two differing ideals. But what about Middle Eastern perspectives on masculinity? In many Middle Eastern cultures, masculinity is often closely tied to concepts of honor and reputation. The notion of izg, I totally butchered that pronunciation, I'm sure, which means honor, plays a significant role in how men are expected to behave, emphasizing protection of family and community, often through displays of strength and courage. This perspective can create pressures for men to embody a hyper-masculine ideal where aggression and dominance are seen as necessary traits. However, there are also emerging movements within these cultures advocating for a redefinition of masculinity that embraces emotional intelligence and respectful relationships. But what about Latin American perspectives on masculinity? In Latin America, masculinity is often shaped by a blend of indigenous, European, and African influences, resulting in diverse expressions of what it means to be a man. The concept of machismo is often referenced, which traditionally emphasizes strength, authority, and sexual prowess. While this can lead to harmful stereotypes and behaviors, contemporary discussions are increasingly challenging these notions, advocating for a model of masculinity that values emotional connection and mutual respect in relationships. Movements promoting gender equality are gaining traction and encouraging men to embrace vulnerability and allyship. Let's talk about indigenous perspectives on masculinity. Indigenous cultures around the world offer unique perspectives on masculinity that often contrast sharply with Western ideals. In many indigenous communities, masculinity is viewed through a lens of connection to nature, community, and spirituality. For instance, among certain Native American tribes, the role of men includes being nurturers and caretakers, challenging the stereotype of the stoic, emotionally distant male. These perspectives emphasize relationality and responsibility to the community, showcasing a more holistic view of masculinity. As we can see, masculinity is not a monolithic concept. It is shaped by cultural values, historical experiences, and social structure. While some traits, such as strength and leadership, are celebrated in many cultures, the ways in which they manifest can differ dramatically. The diversity highlights the importance of understanding masculinity within its cultural context, acknowledging that rigid definitions can be limiting and detrimental. By exploring these various interpretations of masculinity, we can begin to appreciate the complexity of male identity around the world. This understanding opens the door to discussions about positive masculinity, encouraging men everywhere to embrace a broader, more inclusive definition of what it means to be a man, and one that values empathy, respect, and emotional openness regardless of cultural background. In Chapter 3, we're going to be talking about embracing positive masculinity. Having explored the concepts of toxic masculinity and the diverse definitions of masculinity across cultures, we now turn our attention to a more uplifting narrative, positive masculinity. But what exactly does positive masculinity even mean, and how can it transform not only individual lives, but also our society as a whole? So how do we define positive masculinity? Positive masculinity is about embracing qualities that promote emotional openness, empathy, respect, and responsibility. It encourages men to break free from traditional stereotypes and express their authentic selves. Rather than conforming to narrow definitions of manhood, positive masculinity allows men to cultivate a sense of identity that values collaboration and connection. At its core, positive masculinity prioritizes healthy relationships, not only with women, but also with other men. It fosters an environment where vulnerability is seen as a strength, where men can express their feelings and support one another without fear of judgment. This shift can lead to more meaningful connections and a greater sense of community. For example, a study published in the Journal of Psychological Science found that men with close friendships reported lower levels of depression and anxiety. This camaraderie offers emotional support, helps combat feelings of isolation, and fosters a sense of purpose. So what does positive masculinity in action look like? Positive masculinity in practice, well, it involves men actively seeking to uplift one another, whether it encourages men to be allies in the fight for gender equality, recognizing that their actions can contribute to a more just and respectful society, or just uplifting their fellow brothers. From a woman's perspective, positive masculinity can be refreshing and affirming. Women often appreciate men who are emotionally aware, communicative, and respectful. Positive masculinity creates safe spaces where both men and women can express themselves authentically, free from the constraints of outdated stereotypes. When men embody these traits, it fosters healthier, more equitable relationships, enabling women to thrive alongside men as equals. So, what's the ripple effect of positive masculinity on our society at large? The societal implications of embracing positive masculinity are profound. When men model healthy behaviors and emotional intelligence, they set a powerful example for younger generations. Boys who see men expressing vulnerability, kindness, and respect are more likely to adopt these behaviors themselves, breaking the cycle of toxic masculinity. Additionally, workplaces that prioritize positive masculinity can foster more inclusive environments. When men are encouraged to collaborate and communicate effectively, it leads to diverse teams that drive innovation and creativity. Companies that promote emotional intelligence as a core value often see improved employee satisfaction and productivity. So can positive masculinity really create a vision for a better world? In a world where positive masculinity is embraced, we can envision a society characterized by compassion, understanding, and mutual respect. By redefining what it means to be a man, we can create spaces where emotional health is prioritized, conflict is resolved through dialogue, and individuals are empowered to be their true selves. Imagine a community where men uplift one another, celebrate each other's achievements, and stand together against injustice. This vision extends beyond gender. It fosters an environment where everyone, regardless of gender, can thrive. By supporting positive masculinity, we are not only advocating for men's well-being, but also contributing to a more equitable and harmonious world. In embracing positive masculinity, we take a critical step towards transforming societal norms and expectations. By fostering healthy male friendships and encouraging emotional openness, we can create a culture where all individuals, men, women, and non-binary people are empowered to express their authentic selves. The journey towards positive masculinity is not just a personal one, it's a collective movement that holds the potential to reshape our world for the better. Together, let's champion a vision of masculinity that uplifts, nurtures, and connects us all. Now, before we wrap up our exploration of masculinity, we've journeyed through the complexities of toxic masculinity, examined various cultural perspectives, and celebrated the uplifting potential of positive masculinity. We've discussed how toxic masculinity manifests in harmful behaviors like emotional repression and aggression, ultimately stifling personal growth and relationships. In contrast, we've seen how positive masculinity emphasizes emotional openness, empathy, and strong male friendships. The idea of bro culture, particularly in the context of gym and fitness communities, has also surfaced. It's important to clarify that pursuing physical strength and health is not inherently toxic. In fact, embracing one's physique and prioritizing physical well-being can be a powerful expression of positive masculinity. When men lift each other up, literally and figuratively, they create a supportive environment that promotes mental and emotional health. The gym can become a sanctuary for camaraderie and brotherhood rather than a space dominated by negative attitudes or competition. For me personally, I have always been so afraid of gyms. I just stepped foot in a public gym for the first time this fall to actually go do a workout, and that's because of all of the toxic masculinity and energy that has always plagued the way that I see the gym community and how I see working out in a gym. I've always been petrified of actually going to work out in a gym and to be in the same room as all of these strong, aggressive mindsets, but luckily, we're actually starting to see that shift, and the community in many gyms is actually super uplifting and supportive. Ultimately, the true essence of masculinity lies not in appearance, but in attitude and behavior. It's about how we treat ourselves and others, how we communicate our feelings, and how we choose to engage with the world around us. Positive masculinity encourages men to celebrate their strength while also recognizing the importance of kindness, respect, and vulnerability. As we conclude this exploration, it's essential essential to remember that redefining masculinity is an ongoing journey. It requires collective effort and a commitment to challenge outdated norms. The path forward is bright, filled with promise of deeper connections and a more equitable society. But as we reflect on these ideals, one question lingers. What if the very definition of masculinity itself is about to change in ways we never expected? In a world increasingly focused on inclusivity and emotional intelligence, could we be on the brink of a revolutionary understanding of what it means to be a man?
Everything that's coming out about Diddy and the allegations, and also this new Menendez Brothers show called Monsters, if you think we need to have a conversation about male sexual assault. The reasons that Diddy was able to hide in plain sight for so long is because so many of his victims were male, and because our culture views male sexual assault as extremely emasculating. Just watched a video of one of the Menendez brothers being asked if they are gay, and yes, that was many decades ago, but one of them is being asked if he's gay because of what his father did to him, because he was a victim of sexual assault. It's really, really scary. A lot of the men who were on the jury, a lot of like homophobia ingrained in it, and they what's happened to this boy, then he probably like wanted it, which is really scary cycle. If you look at R. Kelly or Juno Diaz, if you are a reader, or he's a famous writer, and these are victims in childhood of sexual assault who then later went on to have horrible behaviors and become the perpetrators because they could not talk about their experience or process it healthfully. They end up hurting people. And to be clear, I'm not making an excuse for these people. I'm just saying there are ways that we could stop this cycle from happening. I've seen it in my own life with men I've known who have really unhealthy sexual tendencies and behaviors, and they're like, oh, that's just how guys are, like we just naturally, we have these like weird sexual inclinations that women don't, which is such an excuse. And then it comes out that they have experienced sexual assault, coping with it by developing these unhealthy sexual behaviors. Raising a son, and I'm thinking about if something was to ever happen to him and that he wouldn't tell anybody because of the shame and the taboo surrounding it, and to like protect this idea of masculinity and his identity, and then hurt others. It's just like, it's so sad, it's awful. And I really hope that we start having more conversations about this, so men and boys can feel more comfortable talking about these experiences.